$88,200,000 to remain available until September 30th, 2017. Military construction defense-wide, $3,569,623,000 to remain available until September 30th, 2017.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Oregon seek recognition?
I have an amendment to offer.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 2, printed in the Congressional Record, offered by Mr. Blumenauer of Oregon.
Gentleman from Oregon, recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I commend Chairman Culberson and Ranking Member Bishop for their outstanding work and leadership on this appropriations bill. It provides for our veterans, for our military families, and makes great strides for greater energy efficiency on military installations. But I think it might be able to go farther. My amendment would strengthen military national security and save taxpayers' money by decreasing the Pentagon's energy consumption. The amendment would simply align the House bill with the Senate mark for Energy Conservation Investment Program, ECIP, by providing an additional $10 million for planning and design. The Department of Defense is the largest manager of infrastructure in the United States and the largest consumer of energy in the world, using over 300,000 barrels of oil per day and almost 4 billion kilowatt-hours of electricity per year. That's as much energy as the entire state of Oregon that I call home. The Pentagon operates 500 installations with over 500,000 buildings and structures worldwide. Given the size and scope of our military infrastructure, it's not surprising to find that the Department of Defense accounts for more than 70% of all energy consumed by the entire federal government. I believe that the Pentagon and Congress has an obligation to taxpayers who foot the Pentagon bill of $17 billion a year spent on gasoline and diesel fuel to not only decrease the military's overall level of energy consumption through efficiency efforts, but to move towards greater energy independence from the petro-dictators. It's a necessity for our continued national security, freeing our military from the tethers of foreign oil as resources grow scarcer and suppliers more unstable. It's also an obligation for everyone serious about cutting our national debt. Every $10 increase in the price of petroleum costs the Pentagon an extra $1.3 billion a year on top of what we're already spending. There are alternatives, there are solutions. Congress needs to act by providing the resources and the authorities the Pentagon needs, because supporting our troops means securing their energy future. In some cases, Congress simply needs to stand out of the way so the Pentagon can continue making progress. The $160 million in the Senate bill is only a drop in a giant gasoline can if it's not accompanied by a significant investment in alternative energy sources for use by the military. Leaders in the Pentagon and our veterans returning home from Iraq and Afghanistan stand behind the idea of making the military leaner and meaner by reducing its reliance on fossil fuel. Speaking in reference to this amendment, Mike Breen, a veteran and vice president of the Truman National Security Project, said, "As an operation-free veteran and former captain in Iraq and Afghanistan, I saw firsthand that we have a 21st century military shackled to a 20th century fuel. All of our civilian leaders must match the military's commitment and stop putting short-sighted politics ahead of good policy." But some colleagues are tied to the past, and they've scuttled any and all efforts to provide for greater efficiency and alternatives in military vehicles. The amendment I offer today must be accompanied by future investment in sustainable fuels in the military, and I hope my colleagues on both sides of the aisle will recognize that the only way to truly sustain a strong military and achieve energy independence is to stand up for these investments, not only today, but in future appropriations as well. I thank the Chair and Ranking Member of the subcommittee for their hard work. This appropriations bill puts us closer to where we need to be, and I hope they will join me in making this last push. I urge my colleagues to support this amendment, and I reserve the balance of my time.
5-minute rule.
Okay.
Gentleman yields back.
Yields back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Texas. For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas seek recognition?
I'll rise to accept the gentleman's amendment. But, Madam
Without
Speaker,
objection, the gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Yes, Madam Speaker, the gentleman's amendment seeks to increase by $10 million the Department of Defense's investment in planning and design funds for the Energy Conservation Investment Program, which is certainly a worthwhile program, and I accept the amendment, but I cannot accept and stand idly by when I hear the gentleman refer to energy independence. There's no greater energy independence for America than a drill here and drill now for American energy resources. I proudly represent the west side of Houston. My neighbors, my friends, my colleagues are geophysicists and engineers who have, kids in school that play at the beach. I've grown up on the Galveston seawall watching oil and gas rigs right off the shore. We can produce American oil and gas cleanly, safely, immediately, creating hundreds of thousands of jobs, vast wealth for the nation, and making America energy independent in the short run and in the medium run. Clearly, we need to make investments for the future, for alternative sources of energy, and I certainly agree with the gentleman from Oregon about the need to make investments looking out into the future. Rice University, which I also proudly represent, is doing extraordinary work on developing ways of using carbon nanostructures to transmit electricity ballistically so that we can transmit, store, and transport electricity in ways that were never possible before. And that holds the promise of making America energy independent. But that's way down the road. But I do have to say that while I support the gentleman's amendment, I feel compelled to point out that if you would just unleash the entrepreneurship, the good judgment, and the extraordinary technological capability of the people of America, many of whom I proudly represent in West Houston, we would be able to produce vast amounts of American oil and gas right here in the United States immediately, which would be a tremendous boost to the nation's economy, making America energy independent in the short run. Clearly, because of shale gas, we've got enough shale gas to make America, we could frankly support ourselves on shale gas and oil for who knows how long. But I do agree with the gentleman. For the long term, we do need to look at energy alternatives, and certainly the Department of Defense, you've moved $10 million, you've reduced one account by $10 million and plussed up this account by $10 million, so the overall cost of the bill does not go up. So I do accept the gentleman's amendment, but have a respectful disagreement with the premise of his argument. Thank you. So we accept the gentleman's amendment.
The gentleman yield back?
Yield back.
The gentleman yields back. Purpose as the gentleman from Georgia seek recognition.
Move to strike the last word.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Madam Chairman, I agree with the gentleman that the Department of Defense should be doing all that it can to reduce energy costs and to help us be energy independent. The Energy Conservation Investment Program is a fairly small but a key component of the Defense Department's energy strategy. The goals are to improve supply resiliency, implement energy security plans, and alter energy consumption at individual installations. Investing in this small program helps the Department to reduce its energy costs and help meet its facility energy mandates. The Department has been funding ECIP as far back as 2001, and the committee has seen great progress on energy savings. For example, at Fort Liggett, they're building a 1 megawatt solar grid, which will help that installation ease its energy consumption. ECIP is a cost-saving program that I think all members should be happy to support. Therefore, I urge all members to vote yes on this amendment, and I'm delighted that the chairman has accepted it.
Gentleman yields back.
Yield back.
The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Oregon, and those in favor will signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed will say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, the ayes have it. The amendment is agreed to. The clerk will read.
Page 5, line 10, military construction, Army National Guard, $613,799,000 to remain available until September 30th, 2017. Military construction, Air National Guard, $42,386,000 to remain available until September 30th, 2017.
Clerk will suspend. For what purpose does the gentleman from New Jersey seek recognition?
I move to strike the last word, Madam Chair.
And the gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Madam Chair, our nation just marked another Memorial Day at war and another year in which the epidemic of suicides of our country's service members and veterans continues. In April of this year, New York Times columnist Nick Kristof noted that for every American lost on the battlefield, about 25 service members and veterans are dying by their own hands. These are silent casualties of war, and if we're to stop the epidemic, we must recognize it. I want to thank the ranking member, Representative Bishop of Georgia, and the subcommittee chair, Representative Culbertson, for their recognition that continued funding for suicide prevention and outreach programs for our veterans must be a national priority. I'm pleased that the committee looked favorably on my request and included an additional $20 million for suicide prevention outreach programs, including social media, in this bill. This is the second year in a row that the House has taken this step because the administration and the VA have yet to create a dedicated programmatic funding stream for suicide prevention and outreach. Let me take this opportunity to urge the administration and our President to direct the Office of Management and Budget to create such a dedicated funding stream for such programs. Our suicide prevention response must be coordinated and must be funded properly over the lifetime of our veterans, because this is not a problem that will go away once the guns fall silent. I thank my colleagues on the committee for all they have done to craft a bill that will help provide the services that our veterans need and deserve. I yield back the time.
Gentleman yields back. Reid.
Page 6, line 11, Military Construction, Army Reserve, $305,846,000 to remain available until September 30th, 2017. Military Construction, Navy Reserve, $49,532,000 to remain available until September 30th, 2017. Military Construction, Air Force Reserve, $10,979,000 to remain available until September 30th, 2017. North Atlantic Treaty Organization Security Investment Program, $254,163,000. Family Housing Construction Army, $4,641,000 to remain available until September 30th, 2017. Family Housing Operation and Maintenance Army, $530,051,000. Family Housing Construction Navy and Marine Corps, $102,182,000 to remain available until September 30th, 2017. Family Housing Operation and Maintenance Navy and Marine Corps, $378,230,000. Family Housing Construction Air Force, $83,824,000 to remain available until September 30th, 2017. Family Housing Operation and Maintenance Air Force, $497,829,000. Family Housing Operation and Maintenance Defense-wide, $52,238,000. Department of Defense Family Housing.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas seek recognition?
I would ask unanimous consent that the remainder of Title I be considered as read, printed in the record, and open to amendment at any point.
Is there objection? If not, so ordered. Are there any amendments to that portion of the bill?
You got your bearings, Joe? Page 24? If not,
Page
the clerk will
24,
read.
line
The clerk will read.
Page 24, line 19, Title II, Department of Veterans Affairs, Veterans Benefits Administration, Compensation and Pensions, $61,741,232,000.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from New York seek recognition?
I have an amendment at the desk, Madam Speaker.
And the clerk will designate. Clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment offered by Ms. Hayworth of New York. Page 25, line 14, after the dollar amount, insert reduced by $1, increased by $1.
Madam Chairman.
The gentlelady from New York is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and I erred before. I apologize. The purpose of this amendment is to equally increase and decrease funding by $1, is to address an issue for many of our guardsmen and reservists and their families. A number of these men and women, these guardsmen and reservists who dutifully serve our country for many years, are never called into active duty. Under current law, they are ineligible to receive a government memorial headstone or marker for their gravesite. And this issue came to my attention in our own home district in New York when I heard from Mr. Charles Ricotta, who's a constituent of ours. He lost his son Joe to a heart attack. It was Joe's 47th birthday, and he had served in the Naval Reserves from 1997 to 2007. And despite his 10 years of service in the reserves, he was not eligible to receive a government headstone or marker honoring his service. Mr. Ricotta, Mr. Charles Ricotta, Joe's father, isn't looking for a handout. He's not looking for payments for any other burial services. He simply would like to purchase at his own expense a foot marker from the VA for his son's gravesite to recognize Joe's service to our country. So there is a piece of legislation that I've introduced, H.R. 2305, the Memorialize Our Guardsmen and Reservists Act, and that would correct this inequity by making available for purchase through the Department of Veterans Affairs headstones or markers for members of the reserve components who did not serve on active duty. A government memorial may cost less than other headstones, this particular one, and would seem to be a modest monument, but it's more than a simple appearance. It's a symbol of service and sacrifice for our nation. Our servicemen and women, active and inactive, have contributed or sacrificed their time and efforts for our nation, and they've been separated from their families, friends, and civilian lives. Our reserve components deserve the opportunity to be recognized for the commitment they have made to serve and defend our country. They share the same spirit of patriotism as the millions of soldiers who came before them and served in hopes that no others would be needed to serve in time of war. Headstones or markers for our guardsmen and reservists would be paid for by the individual or family member at no additional cost to taxpayers. This has been endorsed by the National Guard Association of the United States, Reserve Officers Association, and the Association of the United States Navy. This issue deserves our attention as we consider this legislation, and I look forward to working with my colleagues to address it. And with that, Madam Chairman, I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Does any member seek time in opposition? If not, the question is on the amendment offered by the gentlelady from New York. Those in favor will signify by saying aye. Opposed will say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, the ayes have it. The amendment is agreed to. The clerk will read.
Page 26, line 3, readjustment benefits, $12,607,476,000. Veterans insurance and indemnities, $104,600,000. Veterans Housing Benefit Program Fund for direct and guaranteed loans, such sums as may be necessary. For administrative expenses, $157,814,000. Vocational Rehabilitation Loans Program account for the cost of direct loans, $19,000. For administrative expenses, $346,000. Native American Veteran Housing Loan Program account, $1,089,000. Veterans Health Administration Medical Services, $43,557,000.
Clerk will suspend. Clerk will read.
Medical Support and Compliance, $6,033,000,000 available on October 1st, 2013 and shall remain available until September 30th, 2014. Medical Facilities, $4,872,000,000 shall become available on October 1st, 2013 and shall remain available until September 30th, 2014. Medical and Prosthetic Research, $582,674,000 shall remain available until September 30th, 2014.
Clerk will suspend.
I guess not.
Right.
Yeah.
Clerk will read.
National Cemetery Administration, $258,284,000,
Consent to be recognized.
The gentleman will suspend. The clerk will read.
of which $25,828,000 shall remain available until September 30th, 2014. Departmental Administration, General Administration, $416,737,000, of which
Madam
Clerk will suspend. The gentleman from
$20,837,000.
Vermont.
I have an amendment at the desk with Mr. Gardner and ask unanimous consent that it be considered out of order.
The clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment offered by Mr. Welch of Vermont. Page 34, line 2, insert before the period at the end the following. Provided further that of the funds made available under this heading, such sums as may be necessary shall be available to the Secretary of Veterans Affairs to comply with the Department's energy management requirements under Section 543F7 of the National Energy Conservation Policy Act, 42 U.S.C. 8253F7.
Gentleman from Vermont, recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This amendment, authored by my colleague from Colorado, Mr. Gardner, and I, does something straightforward. It forces and really encourages the VA to do something that it has been required to do, and that's on energy efficiency. One of the goals I think all of us have, regardless of our point of view about what is the best fuel source, is to do everything we can to make sure that we use less, not more. And one of the best places for us to save on energy is in our federal buildings. And anything we can do to encourage them to do the inventory so that they know what steps can be taken to use less energy means we're going to save taxpayers money and help their bottom line budget. In previous legislation, this Congress authorized, actually directed that our agencies make these reports available. That's a step that would then allow them to participate in energy-saving contracts with some of our energy-saving companies. So this legislation basically says, let's get that job done. And I yield to my colleague from Colorado, Mr. Gardner.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, Welch, for allowing me to sponsor this amendment with you. You know, energy savings performance contracts present a great opportunity for this government to do two of our highest priorities. Number one, create jobs, and number two, reduce spending. It's an opportunity that we can all work together, something that has bipartisan support to make sure that we're doing the right thing when it comes to making our government buildings more efficient and do it in a way that actually creates private sector jobs. By some estimates, the federal government can save $20 billion or more by implementing energy savings measures in federal buildings. And again, this is a program that's been approved, it's in law, and it's something that we've seen before used in a way that can create jobs, private sector opportunity, but benefit all taxpayers by reducing spending. So I thank the gentleman from Vermont for the opportunity to work with him and ask and urge the adoption of this amendment. Yield back.
Gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas seek recognition?
Madam Chairman, we have no objection to the amendment and would be happy to accept it.
Thank you.
The gentleman yield back.
And I yield back.
The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Vermont, and those in favor will signify by saying aye, and opposed will say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, the ayes have it. The amendment is agreed to. The clerk will read.
Page 34, line 3, General Operating Expenses, Veterans Benefits Administration, $2,164,074,000. Information Technology Systems, $3,327,444,000. Office of Inspector General, $113 million, of which $6 million shall remain available until September 30th, 2014. We're not there yet.
For what purpose?
At the desk.
The gentleman will suspend. The clerk will read.
The gentleman will suspend. The clerk will read.
Construction, major projects, $532,470,000 to remain available until September 30, 2017.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Nebraska seek recognition?
Madam Chair, I have an amendment at the desk.
And the clerk will designate.
Amendment number 7, printed in the Congressional Record, offered by Mr. Terry of Nebraska.
Gentleman from Nebraska for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This is to request a dollar in, a dollar out to be used in that process for the Inspector General to look into the VA Office of Acquisition, Logistics and Construction, which is a subdivision of the Office of Construction and Facility Management of the VA. This is the organization that builds and remodels new clinics and hospitals. So what I have discovered because of experiences in Omaha, Nebraska regarding a proposed new facility to replace a very obsolete, decayed facility is that the Office of Acquisition, Logistics and Construction of the Office of Management Construction, or Construction and Management, hires the engineering firms. They do but what turns out to be a skeleton request for proposal or bids. They go out and then they start adding a bunch of stuff on there. Because I don't know if it's because they're afraid to put all of the stuff they want in a bid because then it'll look really big and too expensive. So what happens then, because they do that, there's literally 2 pages of projects that are needed for veterans. But because of their practices and procedures, I don't know if it's purposeful or just competency issues, but the reality then is because of the cost overruns of these additions and the way that they're doing it is perhaps increasing the price of a project by 25%, 50%, even accusations of the Orlando facility of doubling to almost $1 billion hospital. So what that does is it takes money away from future projects to complete the ones that they have miscalculated, again, either purposely or unintentionally, but it's occurring. What happens is they start canceling future projects or pushing them out even further. And by doing that, what it means is that facilities that are decaying, needed replacement, are continuing to be used, but really place the veterans' health in jeopardy. I will guarantee you that if some of these facilities are not replaced in the near future, there will be veterans who die because of the structural and infrastructure problems within these buildings. So something has to change. And an inspection and IG review has to be done to get the VA on the right course to do these in an affordable way without having to raid future funds from other projects. So with that, Madam Chairman, I have one question. It's my understanding, if I could ask the Chairman, my friend from Texas, I understand that you're willing to accept this amendment.
Yes, we accept the gentleman's amendment, and he raises an important point for the committee's consideration.
Well, I appreciate that very much. With that assurance, I yield back the rest of my time.
Gentleman yields back. Does any member seek time in opposition? The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Nebraska. And those in favor will signify by saying aye. Those opposed will say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The ayes have it. The amendment is agreed to. Gentleman from Texas.
Madam Chairman, I ask unanimous consent to consider out of an order an amendment number 1 by Mr. Blumenauer and an amendment by Mr. Schock.
Objection. Is there any objection to considering the amendments at this point in the reading? Without objection, so ordered. For what purpose does the gentleman from Oregon rise?
I would offer an amendment to the medical prosthetic research on 5.
The clerk will designate amendment number 1.
Amendment number 1, printed in the Congressional Record, offered by Mr. Blumenauer of Oregon.
Gentleman from Oregon, recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the gentleman's courtesy. This is such a well-oiled machine, the subcommittee galloping ahead. I apologize that I turned my head. But I think it is worthy to go back and deal with this amendment offered on behalf of my colleague Kathy McMorris Rogers and myself. Today, America stands on the precipice of discovery when it comes to understanding how the human brain operates. These discoveries have huge implications for taxpayers who cumulatively spend over $500 billion a year on treatments for brain-related issues and for some of the most pressing medical challenges we face. Scientific breakthroughs in neuroscience research have led to a higher quality of life for the 50 million Americans who are affected by neurological illnesses every year. Two of the most pressing examples of how outside trauma and events can drastically alter the structure and function of our brain are under the purview of this subcommittee: post-traumatic stress disorder and traumatic brain injury. These injuries can often be hidden from the naked eye. Almost 1 in 5 soldiers in the previous decade suffered a traumatic brain injury, and 15% of our veterans are diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. This represents hundreds of thousands of cases of cognitive and physical impairment due to TBI and PTSD that impact the lives and the loved ones of our servicemen and women. Today, Congresswoman McMorris Rodgers and I, co-chairing the Congressional Neuroscience Caucus, are offering an amendment to the Military Construction and Veterans Appropriation Act to ensure that the Veterans Administration continues to have the resources it needs to find innovative new medicines and enhanced diagnostics for this, what it can truly be termed an epidemic. The amendment does not increase or decrease any accounts in the appropriations bill. It simply requires that no fewer than $35 million of the medical and prosthetic research account go towards post-traumatic stress disorder and traumatic brain injury, so that we can expedite a cure for active duty personnel and veterans suffering the effects of brain and psychological trauma incurred during their service. We are keenly aware that translating research into effective treatments and therapeutics is a long and difficult process. Every area of research undertaken by the VA to help our veterans must be a priority, but we believe that TBI and PTSD research must be further prioritized in this bill because we are so close to the finish line in our race to find the right treatments for these brain injuries that now is the time to dig deep, make the final push. Also, these items demand our special attention because their effects can so easily harm a soldier's family and loved one if not properly diagnosed. Early detection and prevention preempts chaos, hardship, and indeed, in some cases, further loss of life. We must commit to better understand how the brain's 100 billion nerve cells grow, interact, and are altered by our environment. It's hard to think of a more fitting gesture from this body a few days after Memorial Day than supporting this amendment to demonstrate our commitment to finding effective treatments and therapies for these neurological impacts which plague our military personnel who dutifully serve our country. We must remember our duty to the wounded warriors who face a long journey to recovery. These harms may not be as visible as a missing limb, but can be even more damaging to a veteran's future and relationship. I urge my colleagues to support this amendment, a commitment from Congress to our service members that we will continue to do all we can to develop new medicines and technologies to improve the lives for those in need. Again, I appreciate the extraordinary courtesy of the subcommittee and respectfully urge its adoption of this amendment.
Yield back?
I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas rise?
I rise in support of the gentleman's amendment.
Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
To say that he brings to the attention of the Congress and the country an extraordinarily important issue that the committee is focused on. Post-traumatic stress disorder is it's so extraordinarily important and difficult to diagnose in many cases, and I appreciate the gentleman's amendment, and we welcome it, and we'll continue to do everything we can to help make sure to alleviate the suffering of a lot of our veterans and what they go through as they return from serving this great nation, and we accept the amendment.
Question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Oregon, and those in favor will signify by saying aye. Those opposed will say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, the ayes have it, the amendment is agreed to. For what purpose does the gentleman from Illinois seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will designate.
I don't have a pen on me. There you go.
The clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment offered by Mr. Schock of Illinois. Page 28, line 23, insert after the dollar amount the following: reduced by $16 million, increased by $16 million.
Gentleman from Illinois is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. First, let me say thank you to my good friend from the great state of Washington for his cooperation in allowing me to offer this amendment at this time. This amendment specifically dedicates $16 million within the Office of Rural Health to expand the current rural veterans' access to covered health services through qualifying non-VA health care providers to a new area within each VISN they currently operate and new VISNs altogether. This came about in talking to veterans who live, in many cases, hours away from the qualified VA facility, and expands a very popular program within the VA that allows these veterans who are in need of health services to visit an approved health care provider closer to them, limiting their cost, the time and travel required to get their needed benefits. At this time, I'd like to yield 3 minutes to my friend from Illinois, Congressman Schilling, who's been working tirelessly on this effort of expanding health care for rural veterans.
Gentleman may not yield of time, but the gentleman from Illinois is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I believe in the concept of allowing our veterans to receive medical care closer to home. I remember taking care of my dad during his last few months of his life and driving him back and forth from Iowa City hospitals several hours at a time for my dad to get the care he needed. While we appreciated the service and the care provided through the VA, I believe that we must continue to make improvements to the care our veterans receive. I've talked to many constituents in the Illinois 17th District who feel the same way. In 2008, a law was passed that created a pilot program called Access Received Closer to Home, also known as Project Arch. This program helps veterans who are more than 60 minutes away from the nearest VA health care facility to receive primary care for services at non-VA health centers that contract with the VA. I believe this is a very promising program for our veterans, and this amendment would allow Project Arch to serve more veterans, and here's how. A 2011 audit of the Office of Rural Health found that at the end of fiscal year 2010, the Office of Rural Health had obligated $16 million of its budget. The audit went on to find examples of lapsed funding that, quote, constituted missed opportunities for the offices of rural health to improve access and quality of the care to rural veterans, end quote. This amendment would help turn these missed opportunities into more veterans served. This amendment by Representative Schock and myself would take unused and unobligated funds from the Office of Rural Health and devote this money to Project Arch so that it can be served for more of our veterans. I support Project Arch's goals of improving access for veterans in cost-effective ways and improving and easing travel requirements and the care that our service members receive. I also support another program similar to Project Arch. In 2006, Congress directed the Veterans Health Administration to implement a contracting pilot program to better manage the fee and basis care program that the VA runs for veterans seeking care outside the VA system. That project is called Project Hero. The VA has stated that Project Hero has resulted in annual savings of $16 million in 4 VISNs. It operates in less than 20% of potential workload. This means that the savings figure will be much higher if Project Hero is utilized across all of the VISNs and at a higher workload level. That is why I believe that we should support this program and provide it funding so it can help more veterans who do not have easy access to the facilities across the United States of America. With that, I yield back.
Yields back.
With that, I would just say I urge my colleagues to support this amendment to increase funding for rural health care. I yield back.
The gentleman from Illinois yields back. Member seek time in opposition. Not the question is on the amendment. The gentleman from Illinois. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. Opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The amendment is agreed to. The clerk will read.
Page 37, line 17, construction major projects. $532,470,000 to remain available until September 30th, 2017. Construction minor projects. $607,530,000 to remain available until September 13th.
The clerk will suspend. For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas seek recognition? Mr. Chairman, I would ask unanimous consent that the remainder of the bill through page 65, line 16, be considered as read, printed to the record, and open for amendment at any point. Is there objection? Without objection, so ordered. Are there any amendments to that portion of the bill? For what purpose does the gentleman from New York seek recognition?
I rise today in support of my amendment to strike the anti-project labor agreement language in Section 517 of the bill.
The gentleman will suspend, and the clerk will read.
We haven't, right? But go ahead and get your bearings.
Page 65, line 17, Section 517. None of the funds made available may be used by any government authority awarding a construction contract.
For what purpose, the gentleman from New York rise.
I rise in support of my amendment to strike the anti-project labor agreement language in Section 517.
Does the gentleman offer his amendment?
Yes.
The clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment offered by Mr. Graham of New York, page 65, beginning on line 17, strike Section 517.
The gentleman from New York is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Construction is an inherently complex endeavor. Any owner funding a construction project faces a variety of challenges, such as time and cost constraints, maintaining quality control, safety, and of course recruiting a skilled workforce. Public and private project owners are always looking for effective ways to meet demand and manage risks to the financial investors of those projects, whether they are funded through private investors or by the taxpayers, as is the case here with military construction projects. Project labor agreements are a proven tool to accomplish these objectives. The PLA is a pre-hire agreement and business model that increases efficiency and quality while decreasing overall cost. And the overall cost of a construction project that needs to be lowered, and it's based on employing skilled craftsmen and women. Use of a PLA increases the chance that a project will be done right the first time, on time, and on budget. This also helps to ensure future building maintenance costs are reduced, providing long-term benefits to the taxpayer. However, Section 517, in practical terms, would deny the DoD and other agencies the option to use a PLA business model, even if they determine that using one would best serve the interest of taxpayers. At a time when federal agencies are required to do more with less, it does not make sense to remove this proven cost-effective and efficient option that saves taxpayers money. Also, enacting a strict prohibition on the use of PLAs represents a regulatory barrier imposed by the federal government on free market participation. Companies like Walmart, Toyota, Boeing, just to name a few, all currently use this type of business model because they have the knowledge of these very same advantages that I mentioned. Recently, I toured a 75-story Beekman building in New York City, which, without the use of a PLA, would have been capped at 40 stories. And since we're talking about public projects, according to an audit commissioned by the New York City School Construction Authority, these agreements save taxpayers over $221 million. $221 million from 2005 to 2009. In 2009, Mayor Bloomberg projected that PLAs would save New York City over $300 million. And as a veteran myself, I have to point out that this is one of the only business models that guarantees the hiring of military veterans and results in a career job training. Taking this option away would disadvantage the DoD, the VA, and most importantly, our returning servicemen and women seeking jobs to support themselves and their families. Therefore, I urge you to vote yes on this amendment and to strike the language from the bill that disadvantages the DoD, VA, American taxpayers, and our military veterans. I'd like to yield time from the gentleman and my friend, Mr. Pasquale from New Jersey.
Gentleman from New Jersey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I stand today with my colleague from New York, Mr. Grimm, to support the working men and women of this great nation. You might take a quick look at Section 517 in this legislation, the appropriations bill, and think it doesn't stop the Department of Defense from using a project labor agreement. But you must know, in reality, this confusing language is carefully hiding a backdoor opening to do away with PLAs. Specifically, while currently the Department of Defense can choose whether they want to use a PLA, this language would prohibit even the option of choice whether to use a PLA. That's unacceptable. This amendment doesn't dictate using PLAs. It just gives the Defense Department back the option to use them. Agencies like the Department of Defense need the flexibility and choice to use PLAs because of the variables they face in doing their job, from security issues, very critical part of every contract, on-site safety, just as critical, to the skills needed to build unique facilities and structures. Furthermore, the use of PLAs establishes a required skill level for what the project and the government require or desire, ensuring that these highly sensitive and complex projects are performed on time and on budget. Let's cut to the chase, Mr. Speaker. The jobs where PLAs are used require higher skill sets. Can I strike the last word and finish?
Does any member seek time in opposition?
The gentleman have 2 additional minutes to finish.
Is there objection? My 5 minutes has expired. Gentleman from New York is recognized for 2 additional minutes.
I yield to the gentleman from New Jersey.
Gentleman from New Jersey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you for yielding. The jobs where PLAs are used require higher skills, higher wages for engineers and laborers. Undercutting their ability to bid on contracts will not only hurt the project and the Department of Defense's bottom line, but it will also hurt the working men and women who are building our future. I urge a yes vote on the Grimm amendment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Grimm.
Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman from New York.
Gentleman from New York, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Member,
Mr. Chairman.
For purpose, the gentleman from Texas seek recognition.
I rise in opposition to the amendment.
Gentleman's recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, it's important to point out that there are, I'm the first one to be a strong advocate of the 10th Amendment as a Jeffersonian. I really believe very strongly in the whole idea of individual liberty and letting local governments make local decisions and state governments make decisions at the state level. And some states, as in New Jersey and New York, certainly the labor union movement is very strong, and PLAs may work in those states, and it certainly may make sense in New York or New Jersey. But Texas is a right-to-work state, and proudly so. We don't have many labor unions. In fact, very few at all. And in the construction industry in particular, there really are no unionized construction firms. There's none. So if the President's executive order, which he issued almost as soon as he came in, President Obama signed an executive order that said the President of the United States, now just imagine if you're the head of a VA, a local VA, and you get an order from the President of the United States saying the President recommends that you, as the head of the VA, hire a construction firm that uses a project labor agreement. Now, you're probably going to follow that advice. It is impossible to do that in the state of Texas. My friend from Arizona, Arizona is a right-to-work state. Many states across the country are right to work. We don't have labor unions. I believe Georgia is a right-to-work state. We don't have a state income tax in Texas. We don't have many labor unions. Trial lawyers have to really have a good lawsuit before they can go to the courthouse. Taxes are generally low. The streets are safe. You know, we've got in Texas a thundering economy, and if I recall right, Texas has created most of the jobs in this nation over the last 10 years, and one of the reasons Texas's economy is so strong is we don't have many labor unions. But of course, that's up to us in Texas. And people have been voting with their feet and moving to Texas. We've had tremendous influx of people from other parts of the country. But the language that is in the bill, my good friend from New York, my friend from New Jersey, the language in the bill does not prohibit the use of project labor agreements. It really doesn't. The language was carefully written so that the government cannot discriminate against or give preference to a construction firm that uses PLAs, nor can the government, and I want to read it here exactly, nor can the government require a contractor to enter into or adhere to a project labor agreement. And a project labor agreement, I need to make sure folks understand what we're talking about, is essentially a requirement that if you want to do business with the federal government, you have to unionize your shop. That doesn't make any sense in Texas, doesn't make any sense in Georgia, doesn't make any sense in Arizona, where we have no unionized contractors, or virtually none to my knowledge. You can't build a house, you can't build a building in Houston, Texas, if you require the use of a unionized contractor. They don't exist. So if the White House's executive order were, yes, please.
We're trying to work together.
Yes.
As we understand this, a non-union shop can be considered for work under a project labor agreement. You don't have to be a union shop. So a non-union company can do it. All they have to do is to agree to the terms that are part of the project labor agreement. In other words, that they'll use the wages and other standards that the project labor agreement has.
You're right.
And if they'll abide by that,
yes, sir,
then they can be considered for work.
You're
so
right.
that doesn't mean that there aren't any.
You're right, and that's the problem. My friend Mr. Dix from Washington States, is that the VA can require, truly, that you're exactly right, the VA can and will require a non-union contractor in Texas to unionize before they can even...
No, they don't have to unionize.
That's what happens.
You got yield. They don't have to unionize. They just have to agree to the prevailing wage and the other things that are part of the project labor agreement.
Yes, sir, that's correct. And I'm about to run out of time. If I could ask unanimous
consent... But they don't have to be unionized.
If I could ask for unanimous consent for an extra 2 minutes, I'd be grateful.
Well, is there objection? No problem with us.
Thank you very much. If I could, to point out...
From Texas recognized for 2 additional minutes.
The gentleman from Washington is correct. I misspoke. They're not required to unionize, but they're required to adopt the higher prevailing wage. They're required to adopt all the other higher, more expensive standards that a union may require, and that puts that contractor at an immediate competitive disadvantage with all of the other businesses, all the other contractors out there. There are no unionized, or very few unionized contractors in Houston, Texas, throughout the whole state. And that's the problem. While perhaps in New York, while perhaps in New Jersey, while perhaps in Washington State, PLAs may actually wind up saving you money for reasons mysterious to me as a free market guy, but it may save you money. This language does not prohibit the use of a unionized contractor in New York. Let me repeat, in the brief time I've got left, none of the funds in this Act can be used to discriminate against or give preference to a union shop, and the government cannot require a contractor to enter into an agreement. So you see, the language is written, we're all on the same page here, guys. This language does not require unionization. It doesn't force a non-union shop to adopt the prevailing wage, for example, and it enables everyone to bid without discrimination. Where our concern is with the President's executive order, which says that the President of the United States encourages the local VA to hire a contractor that follows union guidelines. That they don't exist in Texas. That makes no sense. That's why the gentleman from Arizona wrote this amendment this way, and that's why it's important that the House defeat this amendment to save taxpayer dollars and to allow non-union contractors and right-to-work states to compete for these government construction projects. And I yield back the balance of my time, and thank you for the extra time.
The gentleman from Texas yields back. Fourth person, the gentleman from Georgia, seek recognition. The gentleman's recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I rise in strong support of this amendment. The language included in the bill says that none of the funds made available by this Act may be used by any government authority or agent thereof awarding a construction contract on behalf of the government in any solicitations, bids, specifications, project agreements, or other controlling documents to require or prohibit bidders, offerers, contractors, or subcontractors to enter into or adhere to agreements with one or more labor organizations. The language currently included essentially nullifies the decision-making ability of not only the Department of Defense, but also the Department of Veterans Affairs, the American Battle Monuments Commission, the Court of Appeals for Veterans Claims, and Arlington National Cemetery to use a PLA business model. To put it another way, all of these agencies currently have two choices. Yes, we want to use a PLA, or no, we don't want to use a PLA. Without this amendment, we will no longer, the agencies will no longer be able to make that yes or no choice. If this language is maintained, then every agency in this bill will literally not be able to make a decision on the business model that they want to use for their construction projects. The language is a backdoor way to ensure that the project labor agreement business model is not available as an option for the federal government to even consider using on any of the construction projects in the bill. Keeping this language would be a mistake, since PLAs ensure that construction projects are built correctly the first time, on time, and as a result, on budget for the end user. Furthermore, PLAs prevent costly delays that usually result from an unskilled workforce's lack of knowledge regarding the use of building materials or tools, as well as job site safety measures. Furthermore, Mr. Chairman, we don't know the effect this language could have on VA projects, and I don't believe that this Congress should include any language that could further delay vital Veterans Affairs projects. I find this language to be unclear, believe it will only add uncertainty and confusion to the construction process. I don't understand why we would take this option off the table. If a project labor agreement is good for Toyota, for Boeing, and Walmart, why isn't it good enough for the federal government? I urge all the members to vote yes on the Grimm Amendment. It's sound, and it will help us to get our construction done on time and on budget and safely. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Arizona seek recognition.
I move to strike the last word.
The gentleman from Arizona is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've enjoyed hearing this, and I would say if the gentleman from New York, if what he were saying were correct, he would be right. I think all of us would vote for this amendment. But he's not. He's not right. The amendment, the language he seeks to strike does not forbid or prohibit the use of PLAs. You don't have to take my word for it. I was the author of the amendment, and we expressly did it so as not to prohibit or allow or anything. It would simply be neutral. And this is what CRS said. So you can say all you want about motives or anything else, but this is what the CRS said. They wrote back to us and said, based on the plain language of the amendment text, PLAs for military construction projects would not be forbidden. Again, would not be forbidden. It is expressly, let me read that again so I'll be clear. Based on the plain language of the amendment text, PLAs for military construction projects would not be forbidden, as it expressly provides that none of the funds made available by this Act may be used by any government authority to require or prohibit bidders to enter into agreements with one or more labor organizations. Here we have it. It's neutral. That's what we're intending to do. The problem is... No, I won't. Not now. Not yet. Let me make a point first, and then I will. What we sought to correct with the amendment in committee was that when the President issued this executive order, the executive order in itself does not does not expressly prohibit non-union organizations or shops from getting a contract, but what federal agencies have interpreted it as meaning as that they should favor PLAs. And so certain federal agencies have written guidance based on the President's executive order that actually favor PLAs. And that's wrong. And so all the amendment seeks to do is put it back on neutral ground, to keep the thumb of the President or this body or Republicans or Democrats or anybody off the scale in this regard. That's what this language that the gentleman is seeking to strike does. It brings neutrality that has been missing after the President's executive order. Again, when the President issued his executive order, some federal agencies took that to mean that they would have to or could require the use of PLAs. And that means that the thumb is placed on the scale in favor of PLAs. So this language was drafted to make it neutral again. That's what it does. If this amendment here is adopted, it will put a thumb back on the scale. And we can't have that. So you can say all you want about motives, what they really want to do, or this is a backdoor way, or whatever, but if you look at the amendment, again, from CRS, not from me, says that it doesn't require or prohibit. So it's neutral. I will yield. First to the gentleman from Washington, but only briefly.
It'll be very brief. The Office of General Counsel of the Department of Defense says about the gentleman's amendment, if enacted, the attached provision would prohibit